I'd like to go back in the book that we're working from and review something that I think is very important. As you know, we had an end of the year retreat, and as always when we do retreats, we also do interviews. We talk to people specifically to their issues that they may not want to talk about in the Sangha as a whole. They may not want people to know they're dealing with. And so we offer the opportunity to talk one-on-one with us so that we can counsel and advise. And what was very apparent to me was that everything is about relationship. Either I'm contentious with relationship, with the day, with my family, with my partner, with myself, or I'm not. And so I think it's worthwhile to go back and talk about this thing, relationship. One more time. We talked about wanting to make this year different for ourselves, remembering all of the angst and the tightness and the tension that we had last year about different things. So how do we get good at having a good relationship with everything around us, because everything around us is a relationship with us? So where I'd like to start, I'm on page 79 for those who have books and want to follow. But it talks about egoless love. Now, first of all, how do I begin to develop egoless love? Well, the first thing I have to do is to abandon my ego. Abandon the idea of self. And of course, in the retreat we had this past week, one of the things we studied was the fetters, and the first fetter, the first thing that binds me to samsara, to suffering, is a belief in self. So right away the mind jumps to, well, if I'm not who I think I am, or I'm not myself, then who am I? And there's a sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya where the Buddha taught on abandoning what is not yours. He says, what is not yours, abandon it, and you will have happiness for a long time. And he goes on to talk about the five aggregates. The aggregate of form, feeling, perception, thinking, and sense consciousness. All of the things that we gravitate to as an identification with self, as the possibility that a self might exist because of these things that exist. But the key for me was, and I'm offering this to everyone else, to help turn our backs on this idea of an individual, this idea of a self. As he said, when what is not yours, abandon it, and the aggregates are not you, and you will be happy. So he's informing us that you will not lose identity because you abandon the aggregates and because you abandon the idea of a self, an individual self. So he's pointing us to a direction. He's saying there's something out there that you will find wholeness in, but I can't tell you what it is. Not because it's a secret, but because it can't be told. And going back to the Tao Te Ching, the first thing that Lao Tzu told us was that the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. If you can describe it, if you can call it, then that's not it. So the Buddha just continually told us what to take off of, what to take off of ourselves, what to remove from our consciousness that causes us to trip up and causes us to have problems with our relationships. And of course, as long as I think I'm in the center of things, then I have relationship with all things. Yeah, I am separated from all things. So it says, being reconciled to the love others can give means the end of putting demands on them. And that is very profound in my opinion. Because for the most part, when you listen to people who have contention with or complaints with their relationships with everything around them or most things around them, they are demanding that the other do something. You know, recognize me, hug me more, talk to me more, carry me out more, buy me more roses. There's this perceived problem with those that I'm in relationship with. Not with myself. There's nothing wrong with me. It's those guys. It's the trees. It's the sun. It's the cold in the winter. So it says, being reconciled to the love others can give. Not what you want them to give, but what they can give. Means the end of putting demands on them. We cherish love unconditionally in any form or size. Now then he goes on to say, at the same time, we do not make commitment to someone if the love that person offers is inadequate. We do appreciate it when we have been given the best this person has to offer. But if the best is still unsatisfactory, the only question is, what do I do next? Most of us ask instead, what should he do next to satisfy me? What should the person, what should the thing, what should the event do to satisfy me, Yes?
To borrow from what Jim has said in the past, I have this friend who was with someone who she was determined or labeled as unhappy and negative. And this person spent time with this other person, and they also spent time with another facet of her personal life, and this person would be coming home later today, and I have plans, God willing, to be with her later. So my question is, how do I have a relationship with someone who's been in multiple melting pots, so to speak, as well as honoring and respecting her own process that vacillated between those two dynamics?
You accept the fact that that's what happened. And whatever the person might be at the time of the encounter, whether they be peaceful or whether they be fragmented because of their own experience, you accept that as a fact and realize that that's not them, that's just a condition that was created because of the experiences that was had in the last 24 hours or the last 48 hours or the last week. That what we do is not who we are. And my advice is to remember not what they might be doing and saying and acting out in this moment, but what kind of love have they given us over the years that have made me so beholden to them, so close to them. So, you know, we sometimes forget that people don't have a responsibility to love us all the time. That's ego. That's, you know, I'm good, so you got to love me all the time. And to respect the preoccupation with others that they also love, that they feel might not be holding up to the reality of relationship, that they're worried about. So on a given day, they might be more preoccupied with someone else's troubles instead of mine, and then I'm concerned and I'm complaining because you're not paying attention to me. And that's, again, that self thing, you know, that ego thing that says, hey, you know, pay attention to me, listen to me. So I would refrain when I'd be away, I'd be on alert to make sure that that self doesn't rise up and start criticizing, but instead be the kind of partner that I'm asking other people to be. And so when I see you coming in trouble, then I'm going to lend my ear and all of my attention to you. You know, I'm not going to say, well, you've been away for a week and now you're not paying attention to me, even though you're back. You're preoccupied with something else. Right? Makes sense?
It does.
Okay. Whoever that is that you know. Make sure they get the message. So he goes on to say, as a spiritual practice, ask yourself about the signs that your love for someone is truly unconditional. As a spiritual practice. And that's ultimately what it should all be wrapped around, our spiritual practice. Ask yourself about the signs that your love for someone is truly unconditional, and we just talked about some of that. It says, first, you feel a sense of connectedness with the other that endures and cannot be supplanted no matter what. A sense of connectedness with the other that endures no matter what. So that's what we talked about, no matter what. No matter what they might be occupied with in the day or preoccupied with. I realize that they have more than sacrificed for me and given me enough love. Right? Now it's my turn to give them some attention. You consistently have well-meaning thoughts and are wishing the best for the other. And that's obviously something that you do, or you wouldn't ask the question. You know, you would just go on your own, or he would go on his own. You act kindly, at times even anonymously, with no expectation of anything in return. You sense your heart opening when you are with the other or thinking of her or him. Now this one, I sort of feel, or I would modify that. I would say you should always have your heart open. You should have a spiritual practice that one of the first things you do is develop loving kindness. The first thing in the morning, open your heart up before anything else, so that no matter who, remember we said, or remember I said, it's all about relationship. Relationship with the day, Oh, this day sucks. I don't feel like it. I don't want to go anywhere. It's too cold. You know, my relationship with everything around me. And in order for me to have a authentic relationship with everything around me, my heart must be open. One of the things that I've always taught on is, if we are upset with, angry with any one thing in our world, that closes our heart to the possibility of loving anything else. We cannot love and hate at the same time. We cannot love and be angry at the same time. We have to make a choice. And if we make the choice to be angry, to find fault, to feel hurt, to judge, the heart is not open. We have to close it up to do those things. And although we say in our minds that we can multitask with the heart, that I can hate you and love you, you can't do that. They cannot exist in the same moment of consciousness. So if you feel that it's important, it is important to dislike, judge, hate, be angry with, be upset with something or somebody. Just remember, you're closing your heart to everybody else, to everything else. Okay. So again, the first thing I think that we should do as a spiritual practice, the first moment or the first moments of consciousness, of awareness, that we should first make sure that our heart is open and we are free from blame, hate, anger, disgust, opinions about anybody else and their wrongdoing or their no-doing. Yes, John?
I've had moments over the last week or in my life where the feeling or the thought feeling is, I don't like so-and-so or this. Mm-hmm. And recently, I'm like, that just doesn't make any sense in this moment to have that thought. And is that process become refined, that it just doesn't happen? So my own effort, my own practice is, why would this doesn't do anything not to like so-and-so or this person, as well as the feeling comes into my field of consciousness. Is there another step?
Yeah, believing what you're saying to yourself. In other words, no matter how much I say something, unless I really believe it and have conviction for it, I'm still not going to act on it. I'll say it because I might think it's the right thing to say, it's the right thought to carry. But if I find it difficult to act it out, to be volitional with it, to agree to disagree, to agree to love in spite of what you might be doing or saying about me, if I'm saying that but not acting out on that, I don't really believe it yet. I still think there's some justification.
And I stop myself from anchoring anything to it.
Good. Good. So, but you see, it's still coming up, though.
Yes.
So that means that anger or judgment is still resonant in your consciousness and in your heart, even though there's some wisdom deeper than that that's saying, "Ah, this ain't right. This don't make sense."
It's right. Yeah.
You know. But if I keep on doing it, obviously I believe in that word more than I believe in the other word, and so I've got to stay with it, I think, until I'm able to convince myself about what is right view and what is right action. Okay? So keep working with it. You're certainly on the right track, but you're not quite sure.
Yeah.
You know, whether they deserve it or not. All right. You maintain a commitment to nurture the other. Not hate the other, not be angry with the other, but to nurture the other, to try to understand the other's difficulty and problem. And again, I say to everyone that we have this nature that says, well, why do I have to be the one that does all of the work? Why do I have to be the one that allows the other to act less than I think they should be acting? But it says to maintain a commitment to nurture the other and the relationship more than your own ego demands. Well, once you don't have ego demands, you don't have to worry about it, because you'll be okay. You know, you will naturally nurture the others. You are no longer pushed or arrested by fears of closeness to or distance from. And you know, that distance is implied in more than one way. So we think of distance as far as linear distance, whether, you know, they're miles away from me or they're in another state. But distance is also when they're right beside me, but their minds are somewhere else. I can tell that, you know. And the complaints that we might lodge because of our sense that they are someplace else. They're not here with me, you know. So you're no longer pushed or arrested by fears of distance. You do not engage in ego competitiveness or aggression, actively or passively. You are sensitive to how the other feels and go to any length not to hurt him or her intentionally. You have an effortlessly compassionate, forgiving, generous, and non-retaliatory attitude in your thoughts and actions. Okay. So, in the understanding of right effort, you know, it talks about subduing and minimizing the unwholesome thoughts that arise and encouraging wholesome thoughts to arise. Well, that sounds like a lot of work, but if I work predominantly on, fundamentally with the wholesome states of mind, it's like reviewing and then asking myself, what would I want them to do if I were preoccupied with a problem with family or friends? How would I want my relationship with someone who's close to me, how would I want them to act about that? And I would want them to be supportive. I would want them to understand. I would want them to know that this doesn't mean that I care about you any less than I did last week or last month. That I've got this thing that I've got to work through. And reminding ourselves of that, about how would I want to be treated? How would I want to be respected? How would I want to be loved while I'm going through this? Then it causes me to change how I feel about it, so that I don't have to work on the negative aspect, but just by changing my mind and presenting a more positive, unconditional acceptance of what they might be going through in the moment, and whatever it is that I can do to help, which is whether I can talk, if that's what they want to do, I can listen, if that's what they want to do, or I can leave the room and go read a book, if that's what they want me to do. That's what they need me to do. Yeah? Okay. You keep your own boundaries intact so that your love is always unconditional. But your commitment is intelligent and appropriately conditional. Yeah, I don't understand. This is psychotherapy babble. Yeah, I don't quite understand. That seems to be conflicted. Can anyone explain that? Does anyone? Sure. You keep your own boundaries intact so that your love is always unconditional. Okay, now I understand that part. But your commitment is intelligent and appropriately conditional. Want me to read it again?
Sure.
You keep your own boundaries intact so that your love is always unconditional. So far, so good. But your commitment is intelligent and appropriately conditional. You're the lawyer. You used to double speak. What?
Few words in this world that I hate more than boundaries, and the whole concept of boundaries and freedom. I mean, that's the first sentence, right? Which you say is unproblematic is deeply problematic to me, but I mean the second sentence just seems like more of the same to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay.
It's not a concept that
All right.
I find particularly compelling.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes, David.
Maybe this is reading in an optimistic spin for myself on that second part, but that you stay present with the situation as it shifts. That's what maybe that's just what I want it to be, you know.
Yeah, I think so. By the far stretch of my imagination, I can't fit that, which sounds great, into this, which I have misunderstanding about. I just don't understand what he's getting at with this. You are aware of your partner's negative traits, of the other's negative traits, and you see them with compassion and amusement without letting them impinge upon you. Am I willing to play on relationships' full checkerboard of light and dark? Now that makes sense. In other words, you know that your partner or your friend or your neighbor or the tree or the clouds or the sky or the ground or the earth is not perfect yet. And neither are you. So you allow and embrace the imperfection that is projected from all other things. And therefore you don't get into all of this other gobbledygook stuff, this crazy stuff, this understanding of boundaries. Well, I'm going to keep this out and I'm going to bring this in. Well, that's how we live. This is what causes our problem. By demanding that certain things stay away and certain things come. But he's not perfect either. He's just a psychologist. But he's trying. He really is. He's certainly brought some points to the forefront that I appreciate and I like. Finally, unconditional love is entirely in the present tense. You do not hold a grudge from the past or hold the other's past against her or him. There you go. That's it. You can't, that's what we were talking about. You can't do both. You can't be judgmental and love unconditionally at the same time. You can't hate and be angry and love unconditionally at the same time. And in my opinion, the thing that gives us the most caution is the truth of the matter that I cannot love and hate at the same time. Which means that if I choose to be angry with you, then I choose to be angry with the whole universe. You know, I can't love my kids and hate you. So that I think, if you are able to see that with understanding, if you are able to agree to that reality, then this, in my opinion, is a safeguard against ever closing your heart up. You know, because I'm hating good people when I close my heart up. And I don't want to do that. I just want to hate that guy. Yeah. Laser love, right? Zzz. Okay. Thank you for listening, and I hope that all of you heard something in this that is helpful. Yeah. Again, in our retreat, we talked about the fact that last year and many other years had too much obsession with divisiveness and polarization. And one of the things that we all agreed we would do was to do our best to make this year different. Okay. But as Einstein says, you can't solve the problem with the same mind that caused it. So there's a requirement on all of us that if we agree that we would like to see this year be different, be free from some of the antagonistic experiences that presented themselves last year, that we have to individually agree to change our minds. And of course, in Aramaic, the word that they have translated as repent means to change your mind. That's what it means in Aramaic. So, some of the other wisdom paths and theologies are closer to our own walk and our own desire than we think. You got to change your mind. To make a difference, you've got to change your mind. You and everyone else. And everyone else is saying they want change. They want America to be great. You know, everybody's saying they want change. Well, you got to change your mind. Because if you don't, you'll just have the same situations that you've had before. Okay? So, when we say we truly want it to be different, and I'll stick with the word different, not better, but we truly want it to be different, then we as individuals have to make a commitment to be different. And as the wisdom says, when you change, and when you change your relationship with the rest, with everything else, birds, the trees, the mountain lions, the earth, the seasons, the neighbors, the dogs, when you change your relationship, the way you think about, the way you see them, when you change, everything else changes. You know, that's the magic of this practice. That I don't have to go around and change you and you and you and you. I change me. And when I do that, everything else shifts. There's a quantum shift. Okay. Any questions or any comments? Yes, Deidre.
Thank you. I think the change comes with practice.
Yep.
It's one thing to say it, and it's another thing to do it. But I think it's also understanding and realizing it. Example of that is, I was in Arizona, we have a good friend that does Tai Chi. And my husband, his name is Peter, and so he thought he was doing the Tai Chi correctly and teaching it. And then he realized, after doing with a friend who's a master and been doing it for a while, he realized he wasn't doing it right. And so he's doing it over again and practicing, because he realized that there are other ways to do it that's going to be more effective. And I think the same thing with the challenge of life. You know, it's one thing to realize, for me, I thought I was doing it right, but really I wasn't. I'm like, I'm stuck. But the only way that I'm going to be able to change that being stuck is to really want to change it. And so I really don't know what one thing had to do with the other, but I just had to say it. So I think it's like understanding that you might be stuck, but you really have to want to change it in order to change it.
Okay. And what is the critical moment when you know you want to change it?
Like right now, being here and having you talk.
Okay. That's a part of it, but what's the fundamental part?
What's the block?
No, what is the freedom?
The freedom is happiness and not being...
okay, that's the fruit.
That's the fruit.
Happiness is the fruit. My opinion is that the way that I know that it has taken hold within me, that I am stimulated and encouraged by the information that I've received. In other words, let me say it this way. If Peter went to Arizona and there was a Tai Chi person who said to Peter, hey, you're not doing that right, he could have kept on doing it like he always did. But the way you knew and he knew that he listened to the person who shared that information was the fact that he changed his whole routine. He started doing something different. As long as we say we want it to be different, but we do the same thing, we don't want it to be different.
Right.
We're just saying what we think is necessary to say to make you think that I'm
right.
that I'm listening, right?
Right.
But if it stays the same, I'm not listening to you. I'm not changing anything.
But I think also, like, you feel, if you don't change, then you feel uncomfortable in who you are. You're just like, you're not feeling comfortable in that. So you want to feel comfortable. You want to feel relieved. You want to purge all that stuff.
True. But you've got to believe in it, and yes, you do have to go through those stages. There's something that resonates that says, that sounds right. You know, I was wondering what the missing piece was. I was wondering why I couldn't go any further in my own development. And it's the same thing with everything else, but I have to be willing to immerse myself in the new information, to bite it, to digest it, to use it, to work with it, as opposed to some who deny it and say, no, that can't be right because they said it and they don't know more than I do. You know? So again, that ego thing, who are they to tell me, you know, what is right and what is wrong for me? So the willingness to change is the sign that I'm ready to change, that I'm listening, and I pay attention, and I respect and I appreciate those around me who are willing to take the time to stop and share. You know? Okay. But thank you for the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
one guy's work who I like to read said, change your mind and keep the change.
Okay. Haven't heard that one before, but that sounds great. Right. Let's go inside for about 10 minutes. Like Peter's friend, I would suggest that if you haven't done any metta today, if you haven't done any loving kindness today, that would be the thing to start with and end with even. If we can't love unconditionally, then we cannot be equanimous. If we cannot be equanimous, we cannot be mindful because we cannot accept things. And your whole practice is backed up. You can't make progress. So looking at it from that point of view, when you are thinking about withholding your love unconditionally from someone else, remember you're really only hurting yourself. Not hurting them. You're hurting yourself. Thank you for being here. May all beings be liberated from suffering. May we be well. May we be happy. May we be peaceful. May we have a beautiful year. Thank you so much for everything you do.